a once-a-day thing where they start to leak.
Okay.
So a pick is helpful just because they're longer term, so we don't have to poke as often. And then they have not started feeds yet.
Yes.
Okay, so they updated you on all that.
Yeah.
Started antibiotics again. So he just said, I'm not ready yet.
Did they find anything in there?
Did the nurse practitioner talk to you yet? Or Dr. Foster?
She gave me a quick kind of.
Okay, I'll see if Kyle can kind of update you on the results of that. Just because that's not, oh, hey, speak of the devil. Because that's just not our area of expertise.
Okay.
So I'll kind of let him go over that with you, just because I don't want to give any wrong information, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We're good with all the other stuff, though.
Yeah.
What else? Sorry, my mind is like, whoa. He is just so stinking cute. I know, I walked over and I was like, dude, you're a mess and your parents are coming.
You said they're coming? Like, let me clean you up before they get here.
You got your prongs and your eyeballs. So I was just going to try to...
Is he tight or is he good down there?
He's soft and he's non-tender. Yeah, I'll grab Kyle in just a second and see if he can update you guys. Do y'all want to go ahead and grab a temp and diaper?
Oh, yeah.
While we're in here? I know we're a little bit early, but that's okay.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's not us, yeah. I'm like, are we?
Yeah, I was looking, I was saying he
yeah, that's okay. Since we're not eating, it's not as...
it's
That's
time.
normal.
Not as, yeah. So go ahead and grab a temp and diaper and I will...
Hey, buddy.
Hey, he got his arm up for me.
Hey, buddy.
He's like, hey, go ahead, take it.
What's up, buddy?
Hello?
What's up, buddy? How you doing? How you doing?
There we go. All right, I feel like my hands are cold. I know you don't like this. Are we reading? There we go. I know. Couple more seconds. There we go. All right, let go. Good job. Don't fuss at me.
Let baby pass by.
Remember that, Marlo.
98.3.
Yeah.
Where that past the 5?
It's clear. There it is. You just took it. You just.
Okay.
Okay. Calm down.
There you go.
Hey.
Hey, good.
Hey,
how are you doing?
So it's the same X-ray that Dr. Foster already talked to you about, but we didn't do a different one.
Okay.
It's just that same.
Okay. Yeah, because he wasn't here.
Oh, okay.
I kind of.
And she was just
and I
asking for
suck
like,
at,
I guess she was curious about what was found. I think.
Well,
or what wasn't, or what?
yeah. So it's kind of tricky, but the radiologists read it as a possible. So what we get worried about when we do this, so when we have a baby that has a bloody stool, there's a couple things it can be. The two things that can present with little bubbly translucencies in the bowel are either a protein intolerance that's usually pretty severe, which is somewhat unlikely at this point, or something that's pretty severe called necrotizing enterocolitis. You can also just have it in stool. So if we take an X-ray and there's stool, and there can sometimes be little bubbles in the stool that you see. Usually when it's necrotizing enterocolitis, it's pretty definitive. When it's stool, it's sort of that, when you look at it, you kind of go, I don't really know for sure. Because when you see neck, you see it in the bowel wall. When you see the stool, it's just kind of, it's non-specific. It's not, you can't really pinpoint where it's at, but you do sort of see it. Do Dr. Foster and myself see it? Maybe if I stare hard enough. But radiology reported it as possible bubbly lucencies, which could be the beginnings of neck. So it's one of those things where your baby looks fantastic. and really has this whole time. However, we did have some bloody stool that we don't know for sure what the cause was. And then now we have an x-ray that may or may not show some of those bubble disease that she talked about. So it's one of those deals where by no means do we think that's what it is, but necrotizing enterocolitis is such a severe thing.
Catch it early if.
Yeah, if you ignore it, it can be bad. However, if you sort of over-treat and make sure it's not that, everything works out great. So it just, you know, minus that x-ray, your baby looks fantastic, everything looks good, so you would go, okay, yeah, I'm not sure what that was, but it was maybe a little protein. When babies have protein intolerance, they can actually have bloody stools. It can be severe enough. However, you typically see that on x-ray too. But since they saw that this morning, and we can't necessarily disagree with them, I would look at it and go, oh man, that's pneumatosis.
Okay.
But I definitely can't say, that's definitely not pneumatosis. So just to be on the safe side, messing around with neck is bad.
Okay.
But getting ahead of it and treating it is the safest route.
And that's what you were saying, the overly cautious.
Yeah, so, and we tend to be that with babies, just because when you don't, it can be devastating. And frankly, one of the worst, if not the worst thing you could have in a baby is neck.
Okay.
So we would be foolish to take it lightly. But I think what her point was is, while the baby looks great, we did have bloody stools, and now we've had maybe possible pneumatosis in the x-rays.
Okay.
So the safest thing is just to treat it.
And what you said in what?
Pneumatosis is just the word for, when you look at an x-ray, it's kind of tricky. So it's kind of like if you took a water hose, sort of piled it up on itself, that's what your bowel looks like. And it's normally a 3D structure, but we're taking just a 2D flat picture of it. So it all sort of gets squished together. You should just see little, what looks like kind of like hoses, like little tubes. When we see pneumatosis, what we're seeing is in the bowel wall itself, you're actually seeing little bubbles.
Okay.
And so that's a bad sign. So what that means is that the bacteria that's in our gut that's normal and should be in our gut, and it's a healthy thing, it's only healthy because it stays in our gut and doesn't get into the tissue of our gut. Because we have mucus that's in our bowel, we have cilia that protect our bowel. So the bacteria should stay in the gut, not get into the actual tissue. But when pneumatosis happens, it actually gets into the tissue. And that's where it's not supposed to be. So then it becomes bad bacteria. And what it basically does is, what people may or may not realize is bacteria causes gas. So when they create energy, they break down and cause gas, and so what you're seeing is little gas bubbles from bacteria in the bowel. And that's a bad sign. That means that there's usually an infection of some type. There's many different causes for neck, but what you want to do is you want to see that early, treat it with antibiotics, kill all that bacteria off. In theory, that 5 days, 7 days off of feedings lets the bowel heal, whatever the cause was, and then you start the feedings back. Because if you don't, if you let it progress, that bacteria keeps sort of eating through the tissue, and then it pops through. And so then you get what we call surgical neck, whereas air gets out, all the contents of the bowel start to sort of seep out of the hole in the bowel, gets into the abdomen, and that's a bad thing because that requires immediate surgery. So we don't want to see that. So I would say we're fairly confident this is not neck.
Okay.
However, it's always best to be on the safe, unless you're just strongly convinced that this is not neck. You should always treat it. And so that x-ray just sort of pushed us over the edge. So,
Okay. Let's go with it.
Yeah, I don't think it is, but there's enough here that we shouldn't mess around.
And is it what, I mean, keep treating, but what if you find like, like, oh, it's not, we treat it for this, but like what else could it, like those.
What else could it be?
Yeah.
So the protein intolerance is one thing. Those things don't always show up immediately, but any baby who's getting cow milk, which with our fortification, that has good cow milk babies. So that can cause it. So what happens is essentially human milk and cow milk are flipped. So there's casein and whey, those are the two components of human milk and cow milk. And human milk has more whey and less casein, and it's sort of flipped. It's 60-40 and then 40-60.
Okay.
So what happens is our bodies are used to human milk, especially in a preterm baby, tolerate it better. They're used to it a lot in the beginning, and then we start to fortify, which is important. We need to fortify for calories and protein, but at the same time, sometimes the belly just doesn't like it. It has an allergic reaction.
Okay.
And in that, it essentially sort of looks like peritonitis, which kind of looks like pneumatosis on X-ray. So it could be that causes bloody stools.
Okay.
And then when you stop the feedings, it goes away because you're no longer irritating the bowel. And aside from that, the only other thing that you typically get with bloody stools is you can have like an anal fissure where around the anus, the anus itself is very highly vascularized. So if they ever get a nick or a cut from we used to get them every once in a while when we used to do a lot of rectal temperatures, which we don't do much anymore. Sometimes when babies are just trying to poop and it's a little solid, they can cause a nick there and it bleeds quite a bit. So you get this frank blood in the stool. Sometimes we can tell if that's it or not because it'll look streaky. So you'll have like a stool and a little streak of blood instead of just diffuse blood. But other than that, those are usually the two big causes. Upper GI bleeds tend to present sort of with like dark stool. So if you like the OG tube sometimes irritates the belly, causes a little bit of bleeding. But by the time that gets to the stool, it's just kind of like a dark.
Kind of taking a while to get down, and it's kind of old.
So it's not really frank like that. So I don't know. I don't know that we'll ever be able to say exactly what it was. However,
Also get rid of it.
yeah, I mean, protein intolerance is sort of a meh, not a big deal. Even a little upper GI bleeds from like OG tube, not a big deal. It's reason to fix. Neck
We gotta.
can be a huge deal. So when there's enough things that we just can't say, if we can't walk out of here with confidence that we made the right choice by not treating neck, then we do it. And 98% of the time we treat it because it can be that bad. So what she was saying earlier was that, well, since the baby did look really good, and we're not highly convinced that it's neck, what we'll probably do the 7-day course of antibiotics. But we may start feeds back on day 5.
Okay.
And so we'll generally start back with just breast milk. Do that for 3 or 4 and 5 days, and then slowly introduce
The calories back, which are the fortified milk. Okay.
Yeah, and we've tried to do. We've actually made it, but they've created fortifier that's actually made from human milk, but it's astronomically expensive, of course, as everything is. So, but we generally have really good luck with this SIM human milk fortifier. And there's even a couple studies right now going on. One's in Europe, one's in Australia, where they're not fortifying preterm babies at all.
Just giving them strictly.
Just giving them all breast milk, then going up in the volume. So instead of giving 150, 160 per kilo, they might give 170, 180. And we'll see how those come out. The big reason we do fortification is not necessarily for the calories; it's more for the protein. So we used to take babies up on calories all the time, and when they were 6, 7 years old, their height wasn't that great, but their width was fine. So we sort of, it's a joke, but it's not a joke, but we made sort of short
stocky.
And we realized that that's not the best thing to do, because used to our pups was just weight gain. We just want these babies to grow. We tried to mimic the weight gain that they have in utero. We didn't focus on the linear growth. So now we really focus on protein. Which these human milk fortifiers have a lot of protein. So that's kind of funny. But unfortunately, it's cow protein. So it's cow.
And not human. Okay.
But that's kind of the gist of it, and we probably won't repeat X-rays or anything else. There's no reason to keep exposing the baby to X-rays, but we may do one before we consider starting feeds back. In general, the babies look good. We just keep going.
And what is neck? What is it?
The word?
Yeah.
It stands for necrotizing enterocolitis.
Okay.
And we don't know what causes it. So that's kind of the interesting thing. It's probably our most devastating disease in premature babies, and we don't know what causes it. We suspect there's different theories. Sometimes there's evidence to suggest that something happens actually in utero. If you're able to take, if you're able to cut your belly open and pull all your bowel out, and sort of lay it out and look at it, it is highly vascularized. And if you look at it, it almost looks like a grape bush or something. There's arteries going all over, like a huge network of arteries that feed the entire bowel. And one of the theories is, and there's some evidence to suggest it, is that as a preterm baby, you either throw microclots that'll clot off one of those little arteries because they start kind of big and then they just span out and they get smaller and smaller and smaller. Or because you're premature, at some point during delivery, during labor, after delivery, you have some sort of reduction in perfusion. And what typically gets shunted at first is the body tries to, so if we start losing oxygen, what our bodies would do instinctively is they would protect the brain, the heart, the kidneys, the lungs, the adrenal glands. They would get preferential oxygen. And then what suffers is there's sort of a constriction of blood flow to the bowel, to the liver, to other organs in our bodies that aren't quite as important at survival. And so that sometimes happens with babies. So what we think is at a certain little spot, wherever one of those little arteries is feeding that tissue, it dies. So it doesn't become a problem until you get a week in, 2 weeks in, when we're on pool feeds, we're really asking the GI to really work hard and digest food, and then that spot becomes a problem. The defenses, the natural defenses that keep the bacteria in the bowel start to weaken, and then you get that invasion of the bacteria. That's one thought. There's a thought about cow milk. So formula for sure puts babies at a much higher risk. Breast milk is the only thing that we know that statistically is guaranteed to reduce the incidence of that. Sometimes babies are sicker in the beginning, and they have a perfusion issue. And then sometimes there's just invasive bacteria with infection. So if the baby gets overwhelmingly infected, that infection can make it to the bowel and sort of get. So there's a lot of theories, but we don't really know exactly what it is. Only thing we really know that we can guarantee is that your breast milk reduces it. The fortification usually doesn't cause a big issue, but we know for sure that formula versus human milk, or especially mom's milk, there's no comparison. There's a huge reduction with mom's milk. We have other theories and things that there's lots of studies that have gone about when to start feeds and how much to go up. We actually have a feeding protocol here, and it's based off science. They've actually studied when should you start and at what age and how big is the baby, and you should start this much, and the next day you go this much, and then at this point you go to 22 count. I mean, it's this whole thing. So it gets pretty complicated, really. But the bottom line is, it's a devastating disorder that can cause a lot of damage to a baby. And so when we have any suspicion of it, you should not mess around with it.
Sounds good to me. Been educational.
Yeah.
I was like, I can probably have you up here. So, and then what? Just so I won't.
Yeah. No, well, it's just neck is, and it's, we know how to treat it. We know how to generally prevent it, but we don't know where its origin is. And it's probably different in every baby. So it's probably not just one origin. It's probably multiple factors. But that's why we tend to really annoy people about breast milk, because it's that important. I mean, besides that, there's so many other things. But that for sure. If you ever have a baby or seen a baby go through, especially surgical neck. Medical neck, you have a 5 to 7 days where you stop feeds and you do antibiotics and everything's fine. Surgical neck,
Totally different ballgame.
You don't want to go through that. It's a mess. So we really try to prevent that. But I would say at this point, I wouldn't even be comfortable saying
That's
your baby
that.
had neck. But we so many times will, before we even think that that's what's going on, we'll make sure it doesn't go.
Prevention.
Yes, prevention in here is huge.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, I mean, prevention's number one. Once you get behind it,
It's hard catching
it's
that.
not good, yeah.
We don't want that, right? Okay.
So we tend to overdo on a lot of things, but it's because, they're just a lot more delicate.
Yeah. Even if they put their prongs in their eyes.
No, I walked over here and I was like, dude, he's bubbling away, but his prongs are like,
Got his pressure in his eye.
I'll say we've been doing this for 4.5 years.
He's like, hey,
That's
let
what
me
he does.
hold my
They're
mouth.
always in a weird spot. He hates his
I think
CPAP,
when we
but
put the cover over him, he's like, yeah.
He said she won't notice.
What is he now, though? He's close, right?
He's 31. He'll be 31.
Tomorrow.
I know.
Wishful
Leslie
thinking.
said the same thing. We tried.
We'll get there.
He's like, I hate this CPAP.
It's like if
He's
I could
figured out a
unplug it.
way to bubble though, so we just have to check him.
So that's the thing with these.
Once
They may still be bubbling and you think they're fine and they're just pinched or something.
He's sneaky.
He like throws his pacifier back there to put pressure on it, and he's like, yeah.
Oh, Marlo.
Yeah, one these days. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so
You're welcome.
much
Yeah,
for
thank you. That was very
explaining
informative.
like all of it. And then I'm
Yeah,
like,
no, I
because I was gonna go to Google. I was gonna
Oh yeah, don't go to
Yeah,
Google.
don't go to Google.
Yeah.
Google will give you nightmares. Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
We want to be on the safe side.
I appreciate. We appreciate.
You like the social
Yeah.
We do too.
Cross the guards and
Came through here
everything.
and never had a
Yep.
single problem.
Yeah.
Fine with that. All right, guys.
All right, thank you. Oh, 98.3 for the
Okay.
temperature. We didn't get to the diaper.